Well, you know, isn't it such a wondrous, wondrous day? A sickly day. Today we're doing Contagion. Fifth level Necromancy, casting time of 1 action, range of touch, components verbal somatic, duration 7 days. Your touch inflicts disease, making a melee spell attack against a creature within your reach. On a hit, you afflict the creature with the disease of your choice from any of the ones described below. They didn't keep the 6-foot radius. At the end of each of the target's turns, it must make a Constitution saving throw. After failing 3 of these saves, the disease effects last for the duration. And the creature stops making these saves after succeeding on 3 of the saving throws. The creature recovers from the disease and the spell ends. Since the spell induces a natural disease, that's an important point, and it targets any effect that removes the disease or otherwise ameliorates? I'm not going to look this one up. The disease effects apply to it. So, we got another with options. Let's run through them. Blinding Sickness. Pain grips the creature's mind and its eyes turn milky white. The creature has disadvantage on wisdom checks and wisdom saving throws and is blinded. Ooh. Oh my gosh. Filth Fever. A raging fever sweeps through the creature's body. The creature has disadvantage on strength checks, strength saving throws, and attack rolls that use strength. Flesh Rot. The creature's flesh decays. The creature has disadvantage on charisma checks and a vulnerability to all damage. What? 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 Why? What? What the hell? Mind Fire. The creature's mind becomes feverish, and the creature has disadvantage on intelligence checks and intelligence saving throws, and the creature behaves as if under the effects of the confusion spell during combat. Seizure. The creature is overcome with shaking. The creature has disadvantage on dexterity checks, dexterity saving throws, and attack rolls that use dexterity. Slimy Doom. The creature begins to bleed uncontrollably. The creature has disadvantage on constitution and constitution saving throws. In addition, whenever the creature takes damage, it is stunned until the end of its next turn. Oh no. Oh, so many of those are really nasty. First off, a point to bring up is the fact it has natural diseases. So if you're putting disease within your games, the few, I think 3 options it gives in the DMG, this goes through it. This is added. I mean, you can add this if you want, definitely. It's a natural disease. Does it give you the option to do other natural diseases that if you know of them? Almost like a Collectathon or how Polymorph works if you've seen a creature before? Because this one doesn't say necessarily pick from the ones below. It just describes, oh no, it does say describe with a disease of your choice from any of the ones described below. Let's run through and discuss these a brief bit. Well, actually the spell itself. 7 days is nasty? That is nasty if it lasts and sticks. As for any of these for 7 days would just suck. I guess that's kind of balanced out that there are a variety of ways that you can get rid of it. Anything that can counteract the base disease, whether mundane or not, can still help with getting rid of it. It's Constitution saving throw. A lot of things monster-wise are resistant to con, but the other thing is this is a touch spell, and 5th level, so that's quite the investment. And you still have to make a melee spell attack to hit them. It's not just touch like Bestow Curses, which someone pointed out earlier. The big thing that's also getting me is the saves. It is the fact that you have to succeed on 3 to break out of it, or fail on 3 to be stuck with it, just like death saves. The thing is, they are suffering from those effects while those saves are being made, because it inflicts them before hit. On a hit, you afflict the creature with a disease of your choice, so it hits them first, and then they make the saves. So even if they're really lucky, they will still have whatever this effect is for 3 turns. It's not concentration, and once you hit, they are guaranteed to have this effect for 3 turns, which for some of these is ridiculous, and likely more than that. At max, I think 5 or 6, 5, so they can still save out of it, but fail evenly across it. And then after that, once they fail all 3, they're stuck with it for 7 days. While that doesn't affect enemies immediately in an encounter, DMs, if you're running a villain, oh, have a player stuck with these. Then again, not necessarily just the 7 days thing. I guess it's 7 days. But these outside of combat, because it says natural diseases. So Blinding Sickness, that's bad, that hurts. Even blindness and deafness, while it affects multiple targets and is ranged, they can still have a chance of saving out of it the immediate round. With Contagion, they are guaranteed to be blind for 3 turns. Guaranteed. Or I should say guaranteed in case there's some other thing that can help cure the ailment or some other spell to counter it, but the fact that it's requiring that additional resource to get rid of it, at base, they're stuck with it for 3 turns. It's really good. For the 5th level spell, though, and trade for that, blindness and deafness would, I would still say, better, even with the gamble, because it's multiple targets. The other thing, though, is the wisdom saving throw, so if you're hitting it with a bunch of other spells that affect wisdom, charm spells, though I don't know how many of those require sight. Oh, not to mention, a player getting this, and then getting stuck with it for 7 days, or longer than the initial combat or those rounds, hitting a player with blindness and disadvantage on wisdom checks, at least for 3 rounds in combat, that hurts. That really hurts. And especially afflicting with that for longer than 7 days. Or if a party split and then one of them goes blind while alone. Filth Fever! Raging Fever sweeps through the creature's body and strength. Now, this one's not that bad. It's only really going to affect your barbarian or strength-based fighters, but most people go dex, which saddens me, but I mean, makes sense. It's the fact that, okay, I shouldn't say it's bad. Especially if you're using this as a natural disease, which I know I have run previously. Filth Fever, that's going to hurt. Just as a chance thing to come up. And carrying, pushing, holding, and the fact it also affects strength-based weapon attacks, that hurts. And for the 7 days, like, okay, granted, if you did this on a barbarian in the middle of combat, that's really gonna screw them up. That is at least disadvantage on everything for 3 turns. Or 7 days. And strength saves, in case you have something grappling. That's to say, because these are, like, definitive stat effects on something's particular stats, then it's a bit more particular. That's why I'm bringing up a boss fight, so you can like a bit more tailor the fight that's going around it, or combo it with other abilities or creatures that can benefit off of another enemy creature being weak in one of these categories. The thing with strength, though, is there's no other additional effect. The one just before this had blind for 3 turns, at least, on top of wisdom, which is a nasty saving throw to lose. Flesh Rot. The creature's flesh decays, the creature has disadvantage on charisma checks. That's sad, you look ugly. But the big thing, vulnerability to all damage. Vulnerability. Double damage instantly from every source. Every source. Does that overcome... I'm assuming that trumps resistances and immunities. I'd have to double check that. Okay, so that one's a bit of a finicky situation, but vulnerability and doubling all damage is still good. Especially for guaranteed 3 turns. Again, unless they cast something else to stop it, or use something else. And then 7 days as well. Again, if you hit this with a player. Charisma saves, this doesn't affect saves, it's just checks. I guess that's because the other effect is so bad. Because I'd even say that's worth it. I'd even say that's worth it to go into touch and melee attack for. Vulnerability to all damage. That's the other thing to take in mind with all of these, is it's so good, the initial getting it on an enemy is very difficult. Which is why I'm bringing this up mostly from a DM's perspective. Because as a player, I don't see you picking this up too often. Namely because of that, it's touch, and you still have to make a melee spell attack. It's the same reason you don't see the plane shift banishment feature used that often. It's too much of a risk. It's just like waste a spell slot. But if you got a villain or multiple casters, or like this on a Spores Druid who can take being in melee, which also, I mean, is thematic. It's Contagion. Mind Fire. Creature minds become feverish and disadvantage on intelligence checks, intelligence saving throws, ouch, and behaves under the effect of confusion. Now, I'm assuming when it says effect, it just means the dice table. But compared to the last spell, it's vague enough. Does this also get rid of reactions? As if under the confusion spell, because this just under the effects of confusion, because if this also gets rid of reactions, it's confusion within another spell on top of disadvantage on intelligence saving throws. If you got anything with psionics, that's gonna hurt, or those intelligence saves. Normally stuff with intelligence saving throw is pretty nasty, but under the effect, it's just baking in confusion as well. It's really good, and you can check the confusion video for information on that. Seizure. The creature is overcome with shaking, and the creature's disadvantage on dexterity checks and dexterity saving throws and attack rolls that use dexterity. This is a villain hitting a player, or the rogue, you know, someone using a bunch of dex. That's pretty cut and dry, simple, like the strength one. Slimy Doom. The creature begins to bleed uncontrollably. Here we go. Disadvantage on constitution checks and saving throws. Might I remind you, this spell itself and the saves you need to still make while undergoing its effects are Constitution. In addition, whenever the creature takes damage, it is stunned until the end of its next turn. Even with the damage vulnerability, this is the best option, because it virtually ensures or makes it even harder. Even with the example of creatures having higher con saves, or some monsters or enemies, hitting them with something that gives them if it manages to go through on the first save. and then giving them disadvantage on every consecutive save till it sticks for 7 days. And the whole time, whenever the creature takes damage, it is stunned until the end of its next turn. Any point of damage. As long as they're not taking 0, sure, it's not an attack, so if you miss or you hit and they're immune, that's not going to do anything, but any source of damage, get a flask of oil, throw it on them, set it on fire, even if they're resistant or something. Just have something continually ticking to the point you don't even have to give it another attack. Or even then, just keep hitting them. You likely have action economy potentially benefiting you if you're willing to cast this. Stack this with an effect that does continual damage. Summon a fire elemental to set them on fire, cast Incinerate. Again, the oil flask, or mage fire. Again, the oil flask, mix it with a torch, done. Or at least having someone damaging them each turn. That's stun. Stunned for a turn. Because that's then all the effects of stun on top of this, while also still already having disadvantage on all the saving throws of this spell itself. They're way less likely to save out of it. Yellow. A stunned creature is incapacitated. See the condition, which incapacitated means a creature can't take actions or reactions. Already beating the one above it. Can't move and can speak only falteringly. Creature automatically fails strength and dexterity saving throws. Already better than the 2 that target strength and dex. Attack rolls against the creature have advantage, which none of the others give. And more likely to hit, more likely to deal damage, more likely they're gonna stay under this stun. This is one of the few effects where I'd say it's even if this is from a player's point of view, still worth it to make that risk for that touch and melee spell attack. Again, the other thing, oh my god, I forgot about that. I've been talking this whole time about the con save being a downside, but the first effect of this is not up to a con save, it's up to your spell attack versus their AC. It's gonna go in anyway. And then if you give them disadvantage, even if they have a high save, they're not gonna save out of the initial effect. That's only if they have a high AC or not. That's up to your roll. This is just almost guaranteeing it's gonna be stuck with that. On top of the stun every round, this is a boss killer. This is a monster killer. This is a single entity. You are not participating in this fight anymore. Your warranty on life has expired. Not to mention, even though we've been talking about this in the sense of a boss fight, or players hitting someone with this effect, having a boss or some spellcasting minion cast this on a player. And I keep saying cast. And this is the last reminder that all of these are natural diseases. So if you ever wanted a list that the DMG didn't provide when talking about diseases, here you go. And there's some nice options in here. Hitting a player with Slimy Doom, just in the wild and not with the casting of a spell, terrible. And this also goes to ask the question, because it's a natural disease that they're hit with. Does that mean they're also contagious? Do you see where I'm going with this? Can you then get vials of this stuff, use it almost like a poison on any of these? You can make your own sick bank, I guess. While it won't be like, oh, instantly contagious in the middle of combat, this is for an out of combat thing. Can you commit biological warfare with enough prep with Contagion? I'd leave that up to the DM. And as a DM, I'd say yes. I'd say you're contagious. Because it's a natural disease and can be also fixed by other means, natural or not. No, it doesn't have to be magical. And in that category, not just talking about that biological warfare front, but as a DM or world building and such, you can just cast this on someone and let them roam. That's a villain that's hard to fight. One that just simply lets everyone get sick. I now have an encounter to make. Anyways, this spell, even with its options, for me, 9 out of 10. Just the 3 saves, the fact that these effects are guaranteed. Yes, there's some options that are lackluster. There are some that are definitely better, and some enemies would be able to save out this a bit easier. 8 out of 10. No, bring it down to 8. Even though it's really good in my mind, can't ignore that touch. The spell attack, weirdly, is actually in its favor. But the touch effect and the spell slot it's at, 8 out of 10.